Disclosures for this and all episodes in this series can be found on the podcast series destination page located on education.webmd.com. The following presentation is copyrighted by WebMD Education. No use, broadcast, or recording of this presentation or any part thereof is permitted without the written authorization of WebMD Education.
The following podcast is supported by an independent educational grant from Novo Nordisk.
Hi, my name is Dr. Donna Ryan, and I'm Professor Emerita at the Pennington Biomedical Research Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Welcome to this podcast episode, Tips for Going Out to Eat While Trying to Lose Weight. This is part of a 6-episode podcast series called Finding the Weight Loss Plan for You. Today, I'm speaking with a patient, Sarita, who's going to share with us some tips on what she does when she goes out to stick to her weight loss plan. But first, I'm going to start by asking you, Sarita, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Dr. Ryan. Thanks for having me. My name is Sarita. I am a brand strategist in my 30s, living out in LA with my dog, Tuna, who you might hear in the background a little bit. I grew up in Connecticut and moved out here recently, travel quite a bit for work. And now I am living life in LA and enjoying the beach.
Sounds wonderful. What's your weight loss journey been like?
Weight is something I have struggled with my whole life. I was never the skinny kid, was always a little chubby. I grew up around people who could stop eating like their Sunday pastry for a couple of weeks and lose 12 pounds, but I could do everything in my power to lose weight and it just like would not come off. It's always just been a struggle and something I've had to be conscious about. My family has issues with obesity, so it's always been really at the forefront of my mind. I've gotten made fun of it. Really just like sticks with you for a long time.
What's your relationship with food been like? Has it changed since you were younger?
I've always I love food. I think I always have. My parents have always loved food. It's something that I've had to be really aware of. I'm not someone who can just eat whatever they want. And it's just something that I've always had to think about, but I really do love food and look at it as kind of like a cultural tool. It's something I enjoy the most when I travel is going and trying the foods that make the place. And I think food's something we all have a relationship with.
Yeah, that's actually a healthy attitude. But what about the relationship between overweight and health? Are there complications that you've seen in your health? What about your families?
Not in my health. I am overweight, so it's definitely something I feel, but it hasn't led to any major complications. But a lot of people in my family have had gastric bypass, have had the band, they've had it multiple times. It's something that is just really runs pretty deep on both sides.
And what about diabetes or heart disease or other obesity-related complications? Any of that?
Yeah, a few of my family members have diabetes and others have had complications with surgery that have been because they're obese. So it's just something that you think about a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's switch gears and talk about how you manage to stick to your diet plans when you're at home versus when you go out. Most people seem to do okay when they can control their own environment. Sarita, how do you manage at home?
At home, it's a lot easier to monitor. I did a calorie and points-based nutrition plan in college. And since then, I just always count in my head. I look at labels. I know what to look at. I'm doing the math. And for a really long time, that calorie in, calorie out worked. When I'm home, I also measure food. If I am trying to get a certain number of calories, I'll measure to make sure that, it's the exact ounces or measurement for that. And I think eating clean, not using oil, not using sauces, not drinking alcohol at home, trying to eat more vegetables and get my calorie intake that way. I don't eat because I'm hungry, or if I do, I'll drink some broth instead to fill that void. But I do eat because it's 1:00 and I should be eating lunch. So that's something I've always had to monitor. I've been a quantity over quality person. I need a lot to feel full when I'm home. So I try to make those foods that I eat as low calorie as possible.
It seems like you really have your home environment under control. But what about craving? Do you have any issues with that? How do you handle that?
I just know I can't, at home, if I'm craving something, I'll eat baby carrots or sip on like a chicken broth. It's a lot easier, but when I'm out, I give myself a little bit more grace. If I'm craving a mac and cheese, I'll have that. I try and balance it as much as possible. And at home, it's somewhere I know I can control and almost get over it. But when I'm out, like that's when I let myself enjoy a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, in a social setting, sometimes things change. How do you manage that social setting?
I think it's really important to be social and go out with your friends. And I go out, 1 or 2 nights a week. And I do really love food. I find it fascinating. So when I'm out with my friends, I try and I wouldn't call it a cheat day, but I try and like allow myself that grace to enjoy it and really like have the foods, but maybe not order the fried chicken or the sandwich and get the salad instead, but still not being incredibly strict about it. Not using dressing was something that just stuck with me and I still don't really use it. I always get the dressing on the side. Like the things I can do that don't bother me, I will do. But then, like I said, I love mac and cheese. So if I want the mac and cheese, I'll get that too.
I like your phrase, allow myself the grace to enjoy it. But what about alcohol? Sometimes that'll lower your inhibitions. How do you manage that?
When it comes to like drinking alcohol, I try to drink something that's more like tequila on the rocks or vodka club soda or wine that's a little bit lower in calories. I don't do the cocktails because I don't know what the ingredients are. And by general rule, I don't want to drink calories because they're not going to be filling.
I agree with your strategy on this. What about when you're traveling? What are your strategies for that?
When I'm traveling, I try and, go somewhere where there's breakfast, where I can really like start the day off well, have things like tomatoes and cucumbers. I'm allergic to eggs, so it's a little bit more difficult for me, but really like fill up on protein in the morning so I'm not grabbing a croissant when I'm walking around. I also try to bring snacks with me that I think are healthier and kind of keep me full. Like I love beef jerky, it travels well. Baby carrots don't travel as well. So kind of just thinking about what I can do to be proactive, but then also like knowing that I'm going to enjoy myself and I want to.
Well, it sounds like you've got a good strategy for the traveling. What about when you overindulge?
I've always kind of found myself that like if I was going out for dinner that day, I'd be like, oh, all the day is ruined, so I might as well eat what I want. And I'm really trying not to do that. I think overindulgence, it will happen, but if I can keep it to that moment in time and not kind of let the train go too far out of the station, that it helps. But it takes a lot of thinking and planning and really just like reining yourself in a little bit.
Yeah, we call that cognitive restructuring when we're trying to do our behavioral intervention. That's a fancy way of saying that just because you have one slip doesn't mean that you can't get back on the horse that you fell off of, that you can catch yourself and restructure that thought and get back on a positive path. So, how do you get back onto your routine?
I had a family friend once said to me, if a book fell off the bookshelf, you wouldn't then take the entire bookshelf and dump it on the floor. And that's like something I think about all the time. So getting back on the routine, like it's just doing it and not letting that one mistake really like cause you to pick up the entire bookshelf. So like just acknowledging it, being okay, knowing you're not going to be perfect. I don't want to punish myself, but I think it's really just about getting back on the horse and acknowledging it.
It's so important that you don't punish yourself, that you want to avoid that because it's really not a sustainable way to live your life. And the best way to get back on track is just to pick up right where you left off. Sarita, earlier you talked about monitoring your food, whether you're at home or out. How do you keep track of your progress? Do you weigh yourself daily?
I used to weigh myself every day and I found it just really wasn't good for my mental health. A couple years ago, I was in between jobs and going just through a lot of turmoil. And it was the one thing that I didn't need to add to my mental stress about. I do weigh myself occasionally, but generally when I'm feeling better about myself, unless when I know the scale's probably not going to say something I want it to. I did start taking a medicine for my weight, and so now I've been tracking it weekly. But I'm trying not to be too obsessive either, and kind of cheat and track in between the weeks and just track once a week to see how I'm going. I think it's good to know how much you weigh, but I think if you're prone to feeling like bad, depressed, it's probably not a good thing to do obsessively.
So let's backtrack a little bit. How did you get started on the medicine?
I went to a medical weight loss doctor about a month ago, and for the first time, I really did not feel gaslighted or ignored about my weight. Um, I had always if I gained a little weight when I was on vacation, there were levers I could pull. I'd be careful about what I was watching or eating, or just work out a little more, and that would work. But for the past couple of years, that stopped working and stopped working as effectively. And every time I'd go see a doctor, they just tell me, you're fine, you're getting older, just get used to being a little heavier, it's not a problem. And it wasn't one doctor, it was a lot of doctors. And I just felt really defeated about it, that I couldn't get the help I needed, and I knew something was wrong. I fit in normal clothes. I'm not plus size in that regard, but my BMI is obese. And it's not, I didn't need medical intervention, but I knew something wasn't right and my body just wasn't reacting. I'm eating 1,200 calories per day, working out 4 times a week. There wasn't more I could do on my own. So finding someone who could help medically was really the next step.
What was the trigger that made you go see a doctor, and how did you find a doctor who knew about obesity and weight loss? A lot of people don't know these doctors exist.
Yeah, I just hit my breaking point. It had been about 2 years. And, I'd have friends do dry January and lose 10 pounds. I would do it, maybe lose 0.2 pounds. I do things that generally lead to weight loss, and they just weren't doing anything. So there is a hospital system out here where I live, where I tend to go see a lot of the doctors. And I looked at their weight loss center, and it wasn't wasn't looking for a nutritionist. I was looking for a medical weight loss doctor. I had to get put on a waiting list. It was not an easy find, but it's really been um, a huge weight off my shoulders to find. And it's really been great so far. She really understood what I was going through and explained to me, in a scientific way, what was happening and why. And I felt validated for the first time.
It's so wonderful that you found a doctor who knows something about how to help you in your journey. There are now 6 medicines that are FDA approved that can help with weight loss. How has the medicine affected you? How do you think it's working?
So I take one weekly. I've been on it for a couple of weeks, and I feel great. I've lost some weight, and I feel like it's really working on a body chemistry level. And I won't finish my plate anymore, which it was just something that, I grew up doing. It's been more I feel satiated quicker. I still count if I know at home I'm only supposed to eat 4 ounces of chicken. I still weigh out 4 ounces of chicken and I'll eat that. But mentally, it's just really been helping. It's made me want to get on track. I was on a flight a couple weeks ago, and the option was grilled chicken or ravioli. And before, I probably would have said, "Oh, let me get the ravioli." And now I chose the grilled chicken, which wasn't great, but I chose it because I was I'm on this weight loss journey. It's working. And I think seeing that it's working has made me more motivated to keep going and being healthy.
Well, trust me, the ravioli wasn't any good either. So I'm so glad you're making smarter choices about your food. Another thing I wanted to touch upon were the 4 pillars of health. That's nutrition, exercise, relaxation, and sleep. All 4 of these are important to keep your mind and body healthy. Are you getting enough sleep? And how do you relax and take care of your mental health?
Yeah, I get a good amount of sleep. I tend to go to sleep pretty early. My friends make fun of me for it. But I usually go to bed around 9:30 and wake up at 7, and I'm not up tossing and turning all night. Relaxation's a little bit harder for me. I get stressed about my job. I'll sit in bed and just scroll through my phone. So that part I could work on.
Well, congratulations, you're doing it right. But it's time to wrap up. Do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners, Sarita?
I think that it's just really been a cycle for me. I think giving grace is really important. I used to beat myself up and get really upset about it. I used to be incredibly strict. I would purge every time I ate something I didn't want to eat. And I just decided I couldn't do anymore. So if I gain a little weight, I've learned to be okay with that. COVID was really tough. I gained a lot of weight, but I knew how I got here. I perfected my bolognese. I don't regret it. I allowed myself a couple glasses of wine at night. So I think everyone goes through ups and downs with weight loss. But like to your point earlier, you just have to get back up and start doing it. Like that's the most important part. And if you're doing everything you can, find someone that can help you, because I think at some point we can't do it all ourselves anymore.
Yeah, Sarita, your story is not unusual. I want to bring out 2 points. One was, as you get older, you will have more difficulty losing weight. Your metabolism changes, and it's more difficult to lose weight. And yes, during the pandemic, a lot of us went through the very same thing you did. But it's inspiring for me to see that you took action, got medical help for your weight.
Thank you. Just finding a doctor, that was huge. I cannot underestimate how important that was. Like, even just from a like I can do this standpoint, I feel like I have the tools now. The last few years have really not been fun to deal with, but I just finally feel that like someone has given me what I need to like get where I need to go in my weight, for my health, for my mental health. And I'm hopeful for the first time in a while.
Yeah, that is good. Sarita, I want to thank you so much. Your story is inspirational and you are showing us the way. And thanks to our listeners for joining in as well.